What if your life changes the moment you decide to believe again? Welcome to the PodBites Show. Today I want to talk about belief, not in a tThe way, not this idea that if you just think positively, everything magically works out. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about something deeper. The kind of belief that makes you keep moving when there's no evidence yet. The kind of faith that makes you continue when life hasn't given you any reason to be confident. Because I think, there are moments in life when you have to decide what you believe before you see the result. And that's hard. Yes, I know that. It's easy to believe in something after it works. It's easy to believe in yourself after people start congratulating you. It's easy to say, I knew I could do it after you've already done it. But what about before? What about nobody sees what you see? What about when you were starting from zero? What about when you have failed before? What about when you are tired? What about when you've prayed for something and nothing seems to be changing? That's where belief comes real. I think a lot of people are waiting for evidence before they give themselves permission to believe. They say, when I start making money, then I'll believe my business can work. When I lose some weight, then I'll believe I can get in shape. When somebody gives me an opportunity, then I'll believe I'm capable. When things start going right, then I'll have faith. But sometimes it works the other way around. Sometimes you have to believe first, then you start behaving differently. You become more consistent, you take risks you were not taking before, you become more patient, you stop quitting every time something doesn't work immediately. And because your behavior changes, your results eventually have a chance to change too. That's something I've been thinking about a lot because there's a huge difference between wishing for something and believing it's possible. Like a wish says, I hope this happens. But a belief says, I'm going to live in a way that gives this a chance to happen. That doesn't mean you control everything. You don't. None of us do. There are things in life that will happen that you didn't choose. Doors will close. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. You can work extremely hard and still not get the result you expected. Faith isn't just pretending that those things don't happen. Faith is being able to say, I don't understand this chapter yet, but I don't believe this is the end of the story. That's powerful because one of the most dangerous things that can happen to somebody isn't failure. It's losing the belief that lying is still worth it. Think about how many people have probably been one decision away from changing their life and stopped. One more application, one more attempt, one more conversation, one more month consistency, one more time getting back up. Obviously, we can't know what would have happened, but I think we underestimate how often success belongs to the person who simply stayed in the game long enough. And I've had moments in my own life where I've had to remind myself of that. Moments where things were not moving as quickly as I wanted, moments where I questioned a decision, moments where I thought, am I actually going in the right direction? And sometimes you don't get a clear answer. There isn't always a sign. There isn't always someone coming to tell you, hey man, keep going, we're almost there. Sometimes the only thing you have is this quiet feeling inside of you that says, keep moving, man. And you have to decide whether you are going to listen to it. For me, that's where faith becomes personal. Because faith isn't just believing that everything will happen exactly the way I want. Actually, I think that can be a very immature idea of faith. For me, faith is trusting that even when things don't go according to my plan, there can still be purpose in the process. Maybe the door closed redirected you. Maybe the failure taught you something you could have learned from winning. Maybe the season where nothing seemed to happen was actually building something in you. And that gives me goosebumps, mate. patience, discipline, humility, strength. Maybe you were asking for the result while life was building the person capable of handling the result. And I love that idea because we often ask, why isn't this happening to me yet? But maybe another question is, who am I becoming while I'm waiting? That changes everything. You can be frustrated with the timeline and still grow inside the timeline. And I think people sometimes confuse waiting with doing nothing. Those are not the same thing. You can wait actively. You can prepare, you can learn, you can become stronger, you can improve your character, you can take care of your body, you can build relationships, you can work, you can pray, you can keep showing up. And when the opportunity finally comes, you are not the same person who originally asked for it. You are ready for something you might not have been ready before. That's to be in the right place at the right time. But there's another side to that too. You have to be careful about the voices you allow to become louder than your own conviction. People will project their limits onto you. Sometimes they are trying to protect you. Sometimes they genuinely love you. But that doesn't mean they can see what you see. Someone might tell you, that's unrealistic. People like us don't do that, mate. You are too old, bro. You are too young. You've already tried that. You should just be grateful for what you have. And gratitude is important. But gratitude doesn't mean you stop growing. You can appreciate where you are and still believe there's more ahead of you. I think both things can exist together. You can say, thank God for what I have, and also, I'm not done yet. That's not greed. That's recognizing that maybe there are gifts in you that you still haven't fully used. Maybe there are people you haven't helped yet. Maybe there are things you haven't built yet. Maybe there are places you haven't gone yet. Maybe there's a version of you that only appears if you stop constantly negotiating with your own potential. And that's another thing. A lot of people set goals, but every day they negotiate against them. I'm going to wake up early. Alarm goes off tomorrow. I'm going to train. It's raining. I'm going to start that project. You feel tired next month. And eventually, your mind learns something dangerous. It learns that your word to yourself doesn't mean very much. But every time you do what you say you would do, you build trust with yourself. And that matters because self-belief doesn't only come from motivational videos. It comes from evidence. You said you would do something and you did it. You said you would show up and you showed up. You said you would keep going, and even when you didn't feel like it, you kept going. That builds something inside of you. And maybe that's one of the biggest lessons. You don't have to feel powerful every day. You don't need to wake up inspired every morning. You don't have to have zero doubt. You just need to make sure doubt doesn't get the final vote. You can be afraid and still move. You can be uncertain and still move. You can have a bad day and still move. You can even lose confidence temporarily and still move. That's why I think discipline and faith work so well together. Faith gives you a reason to keep going. Discipline gives faith a physical form. Otherwise, belief can just become fantasy. You say you believe something is possible, but your life doesn't reflect that belief. If you believe you can build something meaningful, work on it. If you believe health can improve, take care of yourself. If you believe your relationships matter, invest in them. If you believe God has given you abilities, use them. Faith without movement can become an excuse, but movement without faith can become exhausting. You need both. And maybe you are listening to this right now in a season where something hasn't worked. Maybe you were disappointed. Maybe you thought you'd be further ahead by now. Maybe you are looking at somebody else and thinking, how did they get there already? Be careful with that. You don't know their timeline and they don't know yours. Comparison has this way of making you forget everything that you have already survived, everything you have learned, everything that has changed. Sometimes you need to look backwards for a second, not to live in the past, but to remember, I've been through things I once thought I wouldn't get through. And you did. That should give you some evidence. Maybe not evidence that everything will always go your way, but evidence that you are stronger than you think. So if there's something you've been thinking about doing, something you feel called to do, something that keeps coming back to your mind, maybe stop asking yourself, what if I fail? And ask another question. What if I don't try? What happens if you stay exactly where you are for another 5 years? What happens if fear keeps making your decisions? What happens if you keep waiting for confidence to arrive before you act? There are risks in trying, absolutely. But there are also risks in never trying. Regret is a risk too. And I think sometimes the greatest act of faith is simply taking one next step without needing to know the entire path. You don't need to see 10 years ahead. You need enough light for the next step. Take it, then another, and maybe one day you'll look back and realize that the life you once prayed for was built through hundreds of very ordinary days where you simply refused to quit. So believing in what God can do, believe that your story can still change, believe that you can learn, believe that you can grow, believe that your past doesn't automatically determine your future. But don't stop there. Move, work, pray, learn, fail, adjust, get back up, and keep going. Because maybe the breakthrough isn't one giant moment. Maybe it's the accumulation of all the days you choose not to give up. And if you are in one of those days right now, this might be your reminder. You are not required to have everything figured out. You are not required to know exactly how it's going to happen. But you have to decide whether you are going to keep believing that something more is possible. And then live accordingly. This is the PodBites Show. Keep the faith, keep moving, and I'll talk to you in the next one.